What's up, people? I'm Shaggy, the Opinionated Hippie, and this is part 43 of my reviewing and then ranking Frank Zappa's guitar solos within the context of an album. Today's album is Just Another Band from LA. A document of the 71 tour shows at the UCLA Poly Pavilion back in 1971. So I'm going to rank the two solos that are on this album. There should be three. And then I'll show you literally where this album ranks among the other 42 I've already done. Recently, I've been doing all the albums that only have one or two solos. This one only has two solos, only because I'm sort of ramping up to tackle all those box sets that loom in the near future. But anyways, I like this album. I like this album a lot. I love Billy the Mountain, this 25-minute epic that has a lot of sort of Southern California, Los Angeles references that I connect with because they're references about the early 70s. That's when I grew up in LA. I still consider myself, I've lived more than half my life in Texas, but I can still consider myself a Southern Californian at heart. I'm a beach person. I love Billy the Mountain for all of those references. I love the Call Any Vegetable on this for all those references. But I love this album not for the guitar solos. Nothing to do with the guitar solos. There are two of them. I don't think any of them, I'm not going to say they're bad, but they're almost placeholders in the grand scheme of what happens on this album. I also want to just comment on this album because it's 5 songs from the 71 tour. One entire side is Billy the Mountain. And normally in the live context, Billy the Mountain, specifically the Studebaker Hawk section, gets like a full-blown like jam out session, like usually some solo from somebody in the band and then a Frank Zappa solo. It's usually pretty interesting. It's usually high energy. The ZFT has since released Billy the Mountains and the jams from Billy the Mountains on other releases. Finer Moments comes to mind, Carnegie Hall comes to mind, among many others. So you can get Billy the Mountains with those full solo sections in them. They are out there. They're running like, the 30-minute, this is a 25-minute version. You're at least getting 30 plus minutes on those versions. But they were really, really good. And they also, I think, shone a much brighter light on Zappa's 1971 guitar playing than the rest of this album does. The box set that ZFT recently released, The Mothers 1971. I was someone who, when I ranked all the tours, the 71 tour was like, I want to say it was third to last, if I'm not mistaken, 84, 70, and 71. That box set, like I had to completely reevaluate that tour because that box set, just the overall band itself plus the quality of Frank Zappa's guitar playing. The King Kong, You Can't Do That on Stage Volume 3. Awesome example of what he was doing with the guitar back in 71. This album does not show that. So this is a frustrating album for that reason. Plus, Eddie, Are You Kidding? It's one of the 5 songs on here. As far as all the set list I've seen, it's been played twice, right? Twice that we know of, maybe 3 times. So it's weird that was included on an album, though it is somewhat of a short song. Plus, I will say the Magdalena on this is the best Magdalena I've ever heard among all the rotating like Magdalenas that are floating out there in the bootleg section. So I like this album. But anyways, I'm here to talk about the guitar solos. I just wanted to go off on this album a little bit. 2 of them. I'm just going to tell you what they are. I'm not even going to put them on the screen because I couldn't even take the time to type them up. That's how much like these guitar solos have not affected me. Number 2 is, I don't know what number 2 is. Like I thought I was going with this one, but now I'm like, Number 2 is Dog Breath. Number 2 is Dog Breath. It's pretty short. The opening sort of intro, the motif that he plays to like jump into the solo is pretty cool. But after that, we quickly just go off into like just like pointless rock and roll shredding. It's like the band and what they're doing to support Frank is pretty much as important to Frank as far as like the momentum of the song goes. Like the live version of Dog Breath on this album, it's all about the dog breath. The solo is just there because Frank was putting solos there. Are there better solos from Dog Breath floating around out there on like bootleg tapes and even on other releases? Yes, there are. Is this a bad solo? No. Does it do anything more than just serve its purpose as a solo? Not really. So that's number 2, Dog Breath, which means number 1 has to be Colony Vegetable. And most of that, it earns its number 1 slot by it's short. There are better Colony Vegetable solos out there floating around, officially released, also on bootlegs. But it's a pretty short one. And as soon as like the one on the album, Absolutely Free, is longer than its live version. And it almost seems like it was like purposely cut short for some reason. It just feels like unnaturally short. But it gets the number 1 slot because the intro into the solo with this like da-na, da-na, na, 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 like Frank really like digging in on the chords and getting the band's momentum just like rallying behind him before he takes off is really good. And like the transition from that dun dun dun, that weird like the song part and that sort of walk down into the solo, all of that is executed perfectly by the band. Frank just sort of maybe fails to deliver on the guitar solo end. It's a little too short. He kind of quickly just devolves into just like standard rock riffing. So I don't think there's anything really special about the solo. But the beginning and the way it sets up the energy and the way even that energy like lets you go back into the drop or we go back into that dun, dun, bum, bum, bum. Like all of that part works as a solo section. I just don't think the solo is all that like satisfying. Like I want more. Maybe that's the difference between why Colony Vegetables 1 and Dog Breath is 2, is because when Dog Breath is done and the song quickly ends after that, I'm like, okay, let's go on to the next song. When Colony Vegetable is done, I'm like, oh, I wanted more of what we got. So that's why it's number 1, because it left me wanting more. But yeah, 2 solos. There should have been 3. There were different plans for this era of Frank when Frank was alive back in the 70s about sort of box sets. There was originally a release that was proposed in which the Billy the Mountain was like, there was one Billy the Mountain, but it was broken into 2 parts so they could include that massive jam session in there. Those things obviously were all scrapped and we ended up with this. Good album, but not for guitar solos. Where would I rank it? I would put it right there. Almost at the very end. Almost at the very end. It is at number 41. The only reason Roxy by Proxy and Roxy the Soundtrack are below it is because all of the stuff on Roxy by Proxy and Roxy the Soundtrack are on the Roxy Performances, which, yeah, that's only at number 39, not much higher. But, yeah, I just don't think there's anything on here guitar solo-wise that needs to be heard. Literally at all. As much as I like the intros, the sort of opening motifs into both songs, into both solos, I don't think either solo, there is nothing about this album. I like this album a lot, and none of the reasons include the guitar solos. Maybe they do, because I would maybe put as the last reason the fact that the intros into them are really good. Anyways, I'm at this point just rambling. Those are my thoughts. Let me know what you think. Regardless of the guitar solos, I do really like this album a lot. I understand its sort of musical limitations or the fact that it is leaning into the Flo and Eddie period, like in the hardest way it could possibly lead into the Flo and Eddie period. Magdalena, that's a problematic song, but gosh, is it a good one. But anyways, yeah, I'm rambling. Thanks for watching. Subscribe, like, share, and go listen to the Mother's 1971 box set, because that is the treatment that this band deserved. This one does a good job, but doesn't really flex all the muscles this band could flex. Yeah, go listen to that box set. It's fantastic. But anyways, that's all I got. Thanks for watching. Peace. Talk to you later.